Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Tessa Dooms. I will be your facilitator for this morning's session, our thought leadership session with the IEC in Limpopo. The IEC has embarked on doing thought leadership sessions in the post-election period for us to reflect together on some of the things that have happened during the course of elections, but also to cast forward in terms of what we can learn for future elections and the future of our democracy. And so I want to welcome everybody who's here today, who's come from different political parties, who's come from different government associations, from the legislature. We have stakeholders and representatives as part of the Provincial Political Liaison Committee. We have the South African Local Government Association, SALGA, present today. We have the Department of Education and Department of Home Affairs with representatives, and of course representatives from various political parties, particularly from their youth formations. But from the IEC, we also have various IEC officials from different parts of the country, and we welcome them as well. I think there are people who have traveled as far as the Eastern Cape to be with us today. We also have the chairperson of the Electoral Commission, Mr. Musoto Mupai, and we have with us as well the general manager of civic and democratic education, research knowledge, Mokgasi Sibanda, and then we have the PEO, the Provincial Electoral Officer, Ms. Nakaro Mateta. And so they've also graced us with their presence today, and we will be hearing from them shortly. The way we're going to do this morning is we're going to have presentations, short inputs from 4 experts in this field, in the area of technology and elections, and particularly with a focus on the impact of young people. And so they will give inputs in two phases. So we'll have 2 speakers, and then we'll have an opportunity for some Q&A, and then we'll have a joint presentation from our last 2 speakers of the day, and then we'll have some Q&A as well. I do encourage you to please take notes, to please engage, to ask questions, to make inputs and comments. The thought leadership is not necessarily about just asking questions to interrogate speakers, but for us to also share our views and share our experiences. I believe that social media and technology in terms of elections has really brought very different dynamics to our democracy, and not only our electoral process in campaign season. But if we think about the ways in which our democracy is evolving, one of the big parts of democracy is the ability to engage and debate and contest ideas. And the mediums for knowledge production and the mediums for sharing information and knowledge has included increasingly technology in the last 30 years or so. And so we do have to ask ourselves, what role is technology playing in deepening our democratic edifice, in deepening our democratic participation? A lot of us have gotten to the point where we have minimized, I think, sometimes what democracy is. And we think about democracy as the vote. But democracy isn't what we do for 5 minutes every 5 years. It is the engagements that we have on a day-to-day basis. And a lot of that is happening on technological platforms and through technological platforms that are presenting different challenges to our democracy. We've seen it over the last 10 years or so as a global phenomenon as well. I remember after the US 2016 elections, what was then the Facebook group and now the Meta group, and that includes Facebook, Instagram, and now WhatsApp, came under a lot of fire globally and internationally because of the ways in which their technologies were able to be used to influence democratic processes and to influence an election very particularly. And so we are dealing with a very different set of issues and input points now that we have different forms of technology. And so for many of us for whom technology is this kind of front-facing thing, especially when it comes to the ways in which we use social media, we're not always thinking about technology and what's happening at the back end. We're not always thinking about what's happening when we're not thinking about it from our individual consumption of information and data. We're not thinking about the ways in which it's being used as a media, a legitimate media source, a legitimate and sometimes not so legitimate media source that's driving media, the ways it's opening up for the ability for citizen journalism and citizen narrative building and interventions, and the way that it can be used by political actors and non-political actors to shape our democracy and our democratic processes. And then the other part of the story is also about the data and the ways in which that data can be used and can be harvested for different reasons as well. So there's so many complexities in terms of our interface between democracy and technology. And then there's another part of the technology story and conversation that I hope we will get to today as well, because interfacing with it as a knowledge platform and communication platform is one part of the story. The second part of the story that many young people speak about quite often and ask about quite often. I remember a few months ago at the Kagiso Trust Civil Society and Mute, this also came up, especially in light of some of the concerns people have had about the election day and long queues. People asking, why aren't we using technology for voting? Why aren't we using technology more in the actual voting day? And we know that as a country, we've moved quite big steps ahead in terms of using technology for voter registration. And I think we do have to discuss about whether that's being used as effectively as possible. How do we improve the use of technology for more voter registration? As we know, there are still more than 10 million South Africans who are eligible but not registered. And so that's still a big concern. But questions about whether we are in a position where we can use technology for our voting purposes. I remember we were having the conversation at the Kagiso Trust, and the conversation about just using the technology on the day, that the scanning technology, and how that in itself had its own challenges, and whether being able to go digital in terms of our ability to vote will improve people's participation, but also will it improve people's trust? And I think there's a lot to be said. I can see there's already very strong reactions to that. But I do think that those are some of the important questions that we do have to reflect on. Because in the grand scheme of things, what's most important is that we have a democratic society, democratic institutions and processes that people are interested in, but more importantly, that people do trust. I have been a champion of the idea in the last few years that one of the concerns we should be having about South Africa is not who's the party that wins, but whether people still believe in democracy itself. And I'm starting to worry that there's a lot of disillusionment with democracy and whether we trust democracy and the democratic institutions that we have at the moment. And so as part of that conversation, I've said to people, I don't think it's as important for us to be defenders of democracy as it is for us to be innovators of democracy. Democracy must meet the needs of the people in our society. Democracy must respond to the concerns of the people in our society. And so, believing in democracy and defending democracy is not separate from being able to innovate democracy and change democracy to meet the moment. I use the example often that about 20 years ago, 22 years ago, I'm now showing my age for sure, I got my first cell phone, and it was an Alcatel. It was about this big, and it could make calls and take calls and send texts and play Snake, and that's all it really could do. But it was, at that point, it was an innovation in my life. It changed my life dramatically. It meant that I didn't have to sit at my mother's bedside to take a phone call from my boyfriend. And so it changed my life, it transformed. I didn't have to sit at a landline. But if I was using that Alcatel 20 years later, and I walked in here today with that little Alcatel, the same one, by the way, you all would think I'm a little bit off. Something's not right, right? Yet when it comes to our democracy, we were given a democracy 30 years ago, and we've been tinkering rather than really updating it, upgrading it, transforming it, and innovating it. And we've been very scared about challenging even some of our processes and institutions to meet the moment and make sure that the democracy we have is fit for purpose. And so this morning, as we discuss and engage, and particularly on young people, the next generation of not only voters, but leaders and societal change makers, how do we make sure that our democracy, our electoral system, our electoral processes, our politics meets young people where they are, meets the needs that they have, engages with them fully, and does not miss them at any point? We have the opportunity to do that, and I hope that these conversations help us. I'm particularly glad that there are a lot of people from political parties in the room. I think political parties have a crucial role to play in innovating themselves to meet the moment. I sometimes think, even when you get a new party, it still feels very 1980s, hey? And I'm like, are we still doing old things because they're comfortable? But who are they comfortable for? And are they actually serving us? I'm not a fan of rallies, for example. And people say to me, why aren't you a fan of rallies? I'm like, I'm not so sure that thousands and thousands of people are being engaged meaningfully at a rally. They may be getting a lot of, attention to the party, but is it really meaningful engagement if I'm one of thousands of people at a rally? I think those are the kinds of conversations that we must be having if we're going to innovate our democracy and innovate our political culture as well. So I'm glad the political parties are here so we can challenge each other a little bit about what it is that we're doing and how we can be more effective in democratic participation. So without any further rambling from my side, I just wanted to set the tone for today and welcome everybody here. And then I'm going to call on our first speaker for the day, our GM. And so Ms. Mokgesi Sibanda, she'll come in and give us our first opening address for the day, to give us the purpose of the day.
Just bring this a little bit closer to me. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. As Tessa has already said, my name is Mokgesi Sibanda. I'm the General Manager for Civic and Democracy Education at the Electoral Commission of South Africa. Good morning to the Chairperson of the Electoral Commission, Re Musutu Muyepya. And as well the head of the province, Mayor Nkaro Mateta, who's the provincial electoral officer, and one of the 5 women who are leading provinces at the IEC. And it's quite a privilege as a relatively young woman myself to have other women in leadership roles that you can learn from. So thought leaderships are one of the activities that form part of our outreach activities and mandate. And we do this in order to inform and engage citizens as well as stakeholders in the area of electoral democracy. How do we do this? We do this by providing impactful and visionary research, as well as thought leadership seminars such as this to strengthen democracy. And the idea behind this is that we invite experts, as we have today, people who are knowledgeable in certain topics. It could be law, it could be other topics, so that we are strengthening electoral democracy. So at the Electoral Commission, we also conduct research, which is where the thought leadership seminars sit. We have these seminars all around the country, and so today it's the turn of Limpopo, and we've had about 3 others in Western Cape and KwaZulu-Natal as well this week. But we'll also, in line with this topic, we'll be having, hosted by the National Office, one that also focuses on e-voting, which is something we're beginning to discuss at this seminar. As the Electoral Commission, we've commissioned it, but also it will help us unpack, because I think we tend to generalize what technology in elections is. There are many pockets of technology and systems that you are able to introduce into the process that we also need to make South Africans understand. And so we're looking forward, once this paper is ready, to sharing it and engaging South Africans and hearing what their thoughts are on where we could take elections and our democracy in the future. So that is just my nugget. I don't want to speak for very long. I'm not on the panel, so that wouldn't be a good thing to do. I will have a successful seminar this morning. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. We're going to move directly on to our second speaker for the day. She's the chairperson of the IEC. So I have every confidence that you're going to cover some of the topical issues, but I think that when I last heard you speak, it was just after the elections had happened, and I do think that some of the questions around how we measure the success of this election and some of the questions that were raised, I think might be really important for us to touch on. But I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Tessa, I want to thank you for agreeing to facilitate this important discussion with us. I want to thank our panelists for taking the bait to be with us this morning. This is truly a bait. Somebody's got to catch something from here. I want to thank you all for coming. I'm not on the panel, and my job is pretty easy. It's to be naughty and ask questions. Tessa, I could talk about the elections. I have a lot to say. I have suffered tremendously. I've grown shorter, not taller. And I've lost quite a bit of hair. One of the things that this institution must do is to catch your attention and say, South Africans are busy with a national project of elections. And I hope somehow we need to prevail in that undertaking. It is a great pleasure for me to address you today on this important topic, the usage of technology in elections, exploring technological literacy as a political resource on Tuesday. Those who sing have summers in this country. Those who do other things have an annual event that deals with a significant topic. For us, in our practice, elections, 2 days ago, the Global State of Democracy Report for 2024 was launched. This is a report that looks at the world and says, what is the state of democracy in the world? As in 3 voters worldwide live in a country where the quality of elections has declined by perception. In our game, perception is reality. In fact, it has more currency than reality does. Now, I say perception because it may well be that they're wrong, but it may well be that they're right. Even if they're wrong in thinking that elections, and this period I'm talking about is between 2020 and 2024. That period, 1 in 5 elections have seen losing candidates and parties reject the outcome of the elections. Now, we're in court still. We have 5 cases coming out of these elections before the court. If you ask me, what are your thoughts? I'm really a free man. I know I'm not going to jail, and I know we are going to win them. I know that because perceptions must be corrected. And when you engage in a correction process, and those that are not satisfied still feel strongly, I think democracy kicks in. We must go to court, and the court must be a fair arbiter and help us all. And for that, on that basis alone, I'm quite happy that democracy is engaged, that we have nothing to fear, that this is a process better than people going out in the streets and throwing objects at each other. And so I embrace our democracy. I embrace those that are with us in court. I speak to them on the phone if I need to. I write to them, and not a fight, because we live in a democracy. The last point, by the way, we are sitting on 43 cases and counting from these elections. We've lost one, and we've taken that on appeal. I'm sure we're going to win it. And that is not arrogance, colleagues. It's not. It's because democracy has to be lived. It must breathe. We must live in that democracy. And if we can't embrace it, then we've got to find the right people to sit in places where we sit, to do the work we are meant to do. And for me, that is reality. Is it stressful? Extremely stressful. Is it nice? Not nice. But is it important? Absolutely. That's what it is. The last thing that comes from the global state of democracy is that there are declines in the quality of democracy across the world. Europe is taking the hit in a big way. The US is coming in November. There is a perception that it is going to take hit beyond the kind of hit that we saw when a certain president did not agree to move out of the White House. I don't know. I'm not a prophet. I just know that these are signs in our space that we are embracing. The good news is 1 in every 4 countries are moving forward. In other words, they are not experiencing, they're experiencing these challenges, but they are forging forward even as they are challenged. I raise these things because it is crucial for all of us to recognize the transformative role of technology and what it does in every sphere of life. In 1994 in this country, we didn't have technology. In fact, technology was not advanced. Tessa, thank you for sharing your personal story and not taking a call from your mom's bedroom or whatever. But it is so. There were many things that could not have been done. In fact, I want to be really provocative this morning. If you go and say in 1994, I want an audit of the results of those elections, I wonder if you will get them in the same way that we give them to you today. When we were challenged in one of the court cases, we were challenged to say that there are millions of voters that we have stolen from a party. We gave that party every result slip, signed by party agents or not, and everything that we had, we gave. We said, this is our record, and we stand by it. I'm not saying every one of those were absolutely spotless. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it'd rather be an error than an act of omission. That is the point. And so we provide that information. It is on even you. If you want, we'll give you access to it. But this is what technology has helped us do. It is fundamental that we acknowledge and embrace it. There are certain things, and I live in a glass house. I don't throw stones. If I throw them from within, I'm going to break my own glass for a start. But if you throw them from outside, you're going to hurt me because I'll have glasses. Your stones coming to me with glasses. There are 2 failures I want to admit to. I'm not proud of them, but they are not a hidden thing. It's when you do a job and there are dangers that are in that job and you embrace them and you navigate through them. There are two issues we've had in this election. One is one of the 5 key issues we had with technology we failed in. Our VMD, our voter management device, did 5 things, or was meant to do 5 things. It did 4 of them brilliantly. No one talks about them. Excellently. Things that we've never done before in this country, we did with it. It failed on 1. And I own up to it. And that's what the world knows. The world knows that at 2 or thereabouts on election day on the 29th, we issued a directive to staff and say withdraw the use of the VMD. And by the way, we withdrew it from harvesting voter data that we use for research purposes. It wasn't a legal requirement to do that. Everyone that knows about that failure, because we spoke about it, says these guys have failed, and they have failed using technology. I can't defend it than tell you the truth. It has meant nothing for the integrity of the elections. It has not impacted the outcome of an election in any way. Yes, it has given us a bad name and reputation. So we own up to it. The second one, but I say to you, you can't critique it beyond where we are. It has not, and that's why some of the cases that were in court, we're trying to hook on this thing and say, you know, we challenge this elections because you even pulled this thing away. Meant nothing. We have a voters' roll that is required in law. The portion we withdrew was an electronic component of that roll with a voter participation application linked to it. That's all. The second, by the way, even from that, we harvested 59% of the voters' information anyway. If you use any sample by any measure, we still have a good return on how many people voted, where they voted, what time they voted, until we pulled that application away. We'll talk about that another time. The second failing we had with democracy, it's when an absolute innocent error happened that we don't believe it's innocent. And I said perceptions are stronger than reality, but I take you into my confidence this morning. When that leaderboard, electronic leaderboard failed for 2 hours, my goodness, I've never loaded so many calls in my life from that process until we declared the outcome of the election. I promise you. Tessa, my phone, I carry only one. It rang off the hook, on the hook, everywhere I went. I gave it to my PA and said, just tell them I'm still resolving some of the questions others have asked me, and I hope it includes their problems too, and I will come back to them. So when that 2 hours happened, it was an innocent thing to serve you better. Our guys behind the technology were trying to get results processed quickly. What do I mean? When results came, they were updated. They were meant to update every 4 minutes or thereabout so that they come onto the screen. They got to the point where they slowed down and they were processing after 30 minutes. Now, when people know we have captured these results and they know it's in the system but it's not coming up, they have ideas. They think you're doing something you shouldn't do. And the guys thought late at night they want to see what they can do to facilitate this. Now, this is where technology is important. Even the guys using that technology, by the way, we used leading edge technology. It's not everyone that's using it. And we had some of the best guys on this, but even they made the error. They accidentally switched off the display thing. It's not a button. I'm told it's in the code. And they didn't realize that they did. And they looked for that stuff. For more than 2 hours, they couldn't find it. And then eventually found it and just switched it on, and it went on. It was nothing to do with us being penetrated by people say Russia, others say China, others say, any one of those you can call them. And that brings me to the last part of this on the election. Folks, we talk about technology inside the institution. And I don't know many electoral establishments that use technology to the extent that we do in South Africa. I'm not saying we are the best. That's absolutely not my claim. My claim is that the only thing you do these days with us, manually, it's voting and when we count. The rest we do on the system. You can even register electronically these days. You don't even have to come to our voting station. You can change your address, anything like that. But having said that, it's not only that use of technology that for us is important. It's how we secure your data and the credibility of the information that we process on that technology and give you the assurance that the work we do will survive nefarious actors. In these elections, we had more than 30 million attempts on our data center. Thank goodness, none of them was successful. Not one. 30 million. It's not a child's play. And for that reason, I actually sometimes fear if I look back at where we came from. And this brings me to my last but one point. There is the absolute need to harness technology in the work that we do. But it doesn't end there. Voting, it's not about just creating platforms that people may like. It's to ensure that their franchise is safeguarded, however that franchise has been represented. Whether they write you a letter, whether they mark on the ballot, whether they send you a text, however they do, is to safeguard their choice. Make it secret and make it count. That's what we need to do. The day we are going to embrace technology for the voter, but fail to safeguard what it would do for them, we're as good as having failed altogether that call that we needed to make. Now, here are a few things I want to leave you with the panelists. Thought leadership in the Electoral Commission, as we have it. And that's why we have this distinguished panel to talk. You're talking even to us. We raise issues. We know you're not in the space that we are. But, it's like looking yourself in the mirror. This is where we present ourselves. We say, hold the mirror to us. Let us see ourselves in that mirror. And if we are not looking good, we'll find a plastic surgeon to help us look good. That's really the point we're making. Here are some questions I want to leave with you. In 1994, when we voted, me included, the whole objective was just to cast a ballot. And I walked away knowing it has happened. It's done. Tick the box. It's no longer like that. Voters today, some voters, some political parties, in fact, are so knowledgeable on electoral processes that they may walk into my position and get it done. I know a few people that have been working in elections on behalf of their political parties who are truly, truly knowledgeable. And an average voter in South Africa today is like that. They just don't cast a vote and walk away. They say, I voted for so-and-so, I need to know how they lost. Show me the amount of votes which were cast for them, how many were spoiled, and who beat them, So they follow their ballot. They even know how to calculate a seat from the vote that they have cast. Technology has to embrace that. One of the dangers we have seen on the continent with that is that people announce the result before the commission does and place a nation at risk with it. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Can we avoid it? Can we run away from? How do we manage that responsibly? Secondly, when we deal with a democracy like ours, what does absence mean from that democracy? Is it a choice? Is it an accident? Is it a lack of opportunity? Or is it a protest vote that we have? And I want to share with you a study that Moagisi has conducted through HSRC. In South Africa, there are people who stay away because they are voting by staying away. Is it a technology issue? Or should we use technology to give them? Someone has even said, well, if you need to address that, why don't you on the ballot have none of the above? Now, I want to tell you, to be on the ballot, you pay a deposit. None of the above has not paid a deposit. But even if none of the above has a secret sponsor, if none of the above wins, who becomes the president of the nation? Is it none of the above? So there are practical issues we've got to harness and deal with. I submit to you that in South Africa, the average, even young people, are so aware because they are facing democratic challenges every day. They have an issue. And sometimes they simply say, you are doing this, I don't agree with you, and I stay away. I'm not saying staying away for them, it's not. But I'm saying, how do we find ways to deal with it, even so? The third question I ask is, given that every election is different from the other, there was a period when technology was not as advanced as it is today. But even with this advancement of technology, some of us in this room prefer or are saying, no, the world is moving far too fast for me. I'm slowing down. The world is accelerating. This is what, I'm on WhatsApp and that's all I am on. I'm not doing this, I'm not doing this. And there are others that are just embracing every new technology. What should we be preparing for? Are we going to place the minimum bar, but also have the maximum bar that leads technology? That's my thought. I think we should, because in that way you're providing for everybody. But to what extent and up to what point is that sufficient when we do it? At what cost do we do that in a country where we fight for budget with health, with education, with social welfare, with housing, with prisons, and all of these things? And these are questions I raise. For me, as I close, there is no democracy must be palpable. It must be felt. It must be lived, Tessa. It mustn't happen between periods of no elections. Democracy happens when we all participate in an electoral process, and once people that we have elected go to office or take elected office, we hold them accountable on a regular basis. That someone will not go drive a Range Rover from money stolen from the public purse and we think they have arrived. It's when we hold them to account and find someone that will not steal, that will serve the people, to sit in the position they sit and to continue to serve. As you engage with us this morning, help us think how we move forward with with issues of engaging young people. They are our future. Thabo Mbeki once said, "The people have spoken." At what point do we ever get to say, even the young people have spoken in their large numbers, because we have provided solutions, technology included, in their voice? I thank you indeed, and I look forward to the session in full. Thank you.
So I requested that reflection on the election because I don't think we all realize how much of a role technology played in this last election in terms of the process itself. I see there are hands. I'm going to ask us to hold on that. We're going to get to the ability to engage. I don't even know if we had thought that there was going to be questions for that input. But we're going to have an opportunity to engage. So I'm going to take our first two speakers, then we'll be able to engage, and I'll allow you to ask questions to whomever in the room, if that's okay. I just wanted us to have that reflection. I think it's really important that the IEC does speak about the process, and that we do have a lot more engagement about the process. I don't think that, I don't think in the past elections there's been as much request for that as there's been in this election. So I'm very grateful for the IEC's desire to do that. I also want to raise, I think there was a third part of the election that I thought was really interesting. A lot of the court cases were also about the political parties and their uploading of documents and all of that. So there's so many technological components, but I do think they raise up a lot of issues about what works, what doesn't, what our role is, and how do we make sure that there's trust and safeguarding in our election. We're going to be having our first two speakers now. We're going to be talking about young people, particularly in their participation using technology in this election, social media and other things. And I want to foreground this by saying, I think one of the things that we need to realize that technology allows us to do is that it allows us to participate more in the electoral process, even as voters, as citizens. At the Rivonia Circle, what we did this year was we focused on what we called voter-to-voter engagement. And that as voters, besides having to engage the political parties or having them to engage us, we need to engage each other. And I think social media and young people particularly can use a lot of spaces to do some of that work. It is not only the job of the IEC, of government, or of political parties to engage in electoral education, in civic education, and in voter engagement. With the change of ballots this year, I became TikTok famous for the first time in my life. I went viral on TikTok for doing one TikTok about the 3 ballots. And my mother, who is not on TikTok, said to me, "Oh, I saw that thing of yours." And I'm like, "What are you doing?" "A video about the ballots. It really, really helped me." My mother's not on TikTok. I was very confused. But I use that to say that there are ways that we can actually use these mediums as voters ourselves to be a lot more proactive and not leave the political and electoral education only up to the institutions. So as we talk about that and the role of social media particularly, I'm going to call up Dr. Lebogang Lugade. She is a senior lecturer at the Political Science Department of the University of Limpopo, and is also currently the Deputy President of the South African Political Science Association. And she'll be speaking to us about young people and social media in the main. Thank you. I think you should come down.
Good morning, colleagues. Good morning. I trust you are well. So I think as Tessa did mention, the topic for today's conversation on technology in elections and its impact on youth participation. As I was preparing for this talk, I wanted to focus more on social media as digital technology, right? You'd agree with me that social media is a core element of contemporary youth culture. Young people are on social media. Actually there are others who are influencers, right? Who given the high rate of unemployment, have accounts and engage on social media, right? And And majority of these young people are on social media and they use the platform constantly, right? And as such, I wanted to then consider, the ongoing debate or belief that, young people lack interest in elections or politics in general. And I don't think, that is a true reflection as somebody who engages with young people, at a regular basis, right? You'd hear, statements such as, the youth are disengaged, or young people who think that, maybe voting does not change anything, right? And I think the May 2024 has showed us that, elections do change a lot of things, right? And even with that, I think this is not, in any way a reflection of, voter apathy among the youth, or rather a lack of civic education. There are a lot of scholars who have written to say that, maybe young people do participate, in politics, but they do not, participate in, formal processes. Young people protest, and that on its own gets to show you that, young people do, participate in elections, right? And not only that, you'd agree with me that if you go to, social media platforms such as your Twitter, such as your Facebook, young people have these government officials to account. Like if you post something and you say that we are in Limpopo and this is what we are doing, you have young people who engage to say, but there's no water, right? And government officials then to some extent have to account immediately to some of these concerns that, young people are raising. And those are some of, the unconventional means that young people do participate on, on social media. And similarly, I think in this, the May 2024 elections, as I did say, that young people, you see them on social media. I think we should applaud, the IEC. I think, most of this influenced God's, sponsored, partnerships, to do vlogs, preparing to go to register to vote, going to cast their votes. And we've seen, a lot of others who were not really interested in those voting, but because they have the people that, influence them, going out as well, to cast their votes. And that is the role that we see that is played by, civic society organizations, teachers, and even political parties who, wanted, young people to go and cast their votes. But I think, the conversation on civic education is clear. We know people know what is voting, but we have others who just do not want to go and cast their votes. And I think the chairperson did indicate to say maybe that is another field that we have to consider, to say, what about those who, protest and say we don't want to vote, right? And I was having this conversation with a friend of mine who's a community engagement practitioner, right? And I said, maybe we should then, shift the conversation from, wanting young people to participate to having them engage, right? And what do I mean by that? When you participate, participation is a once-off event. You can come here, you're having a seminar by the IEC, and then you sign a roll call. That is participating, right? But after this conversation, when I get to sit and you ask questions, that is more of an engagement, right? And engagement here we mean that we should create long-term relationships and encourage deeper levels of involvement. And I think that is what we have to do with young people. And of course, the two are mostly used interchangeably, and I'm sure you're aware of that, and they have the same goal. But the thing with engagement, as I did say, it offers more of, a long-term relationship, right, with young people. Young people do register to vote, but do not go to vote. And you see it, with the voter turnout. If you take a close look at the national and provincial elections of 2024, specifically looking at Limpopo, you'd see that the voter turnout was at 52%, making it second last from Northwest at 51%, right? And then by age, the youth between 18 to 19 was at the lowest at 45%, right, compared to 70 to 79-year-olds at 82%, right? And as we are having this conversation on, social media and participation, I thought also maybe another thing that we have to consider, yes, technology is important, is the fact that you know, Limpopo is a rural province, right? And I want us also to factor in the intersectional barriers, you know, that, you know, could affect young people to participate in political processes, right? And I wanted to factor this looking at technology itself, right? And I said maybe we should look at maybe the question of accessibility, right? And accessibility here, Tobachala, I'm not talking about, you know, voting stations. We had a conversation last year on, you know, the need to safeguard electoral democracy in the age of growing, what is this, mistrust. But accessibility here, I'm thinking of Limpopo as a rural province and the digital divide, right? If we're saying that maybe how does technology impact, you know, elections, let us also consider the digital divides, which, you know, can be because of expensive data, right? Ms. Banda was talking about how maybe we should also consider e-voting, right? But do young people would they have data? Is it going to be free? I mean, I'm thinking of, you know, when we had to, I'm a lecturer, when we had to shift to online classes, we were moving under the hashtag leave no one behind, and universities made sure that those who don't have laptops get laptops, you know, you buy students data, but sometimes class would have to not comment because maybe data was uploaded late, right? So if we're going to talk of, you know, e-voting and online voting, like you're saying, let us also consider the question of digital divide, you know, especially in rural provinces such as your Limpopo. And not only that, I mean, we know that the high unemployment rate, you know, which is, you know, skyrocketing, which, you know, we also have to consider. Okay, so what are some of the questions that also I'd like us to ponder on, you know, as I leave the podium? How can we encourage the youth to engage in formal institutional political processes, right? And I'm intentional, again, I'm not saying how can we encourage the youth to participate, I'm saying how can we encourage the youth to engage, right? And at the back of, you know, colleagues' mind, I want us to think of the long-term relationship and the deeper levels of involvement that would come with, you know, engaging in informal institutional political processes, right? And I want us to think of this, you know, in the context of the age-related imbalances in political participation. Somewhere in my work, I wrote about, you know, maybe, you know, the reason why young people do not vote is because they don't see, you know, alternative political parties amid all these political parties as, you know, an alternative, right, which spills over to the question of, you know, lack or no partisanship that, you know, the youth is not having or finding a political party to commit to, which will result in them voting, right? Other issues also is the rise of populism, factions within parties, as well as the breakaway parties or formation of entirely new parties which die off at the next election. But going back to the question that I want us to ponder on, I'm thinking some of the ways that we could, you know, encourage young people to engage is to instill or encourage patriotism amongst young people, right? Because even if we have e-voting, you can have e-voting and have data, but choose not to cast your vote, right? But if we encourage and instill this patriotism amongst the youth, I think you will be moving in the right direction. Another point would be, how can we, you know, make voting a responsibility for the youth, and how can we make voting, you know, a duty for all, especially these young people who just, you know, choose not to vote. You know, others do not choose, but I'm thinking of those who have all these facilities, the knowledge, but they just choose not to vote, right? And how do we engage the youth moving towards 2026 local government elections? How can we have, you know, these young people see that we did quite have, you know, changes in the 2024 elections? How can we then go and, you know, participate even in the local government elections? I'm going to end my talk here because Tessa just told me running out of time. Thank you, colleagues.
Unfortunately, facilitation is not democracy. And as you talk about the issues of data, forget data, there's also signal problems. I mean, sometimes it's not data, sometimes it's just signal. But I really appreciate that you reminded us that young people are participating in various ways. And one of them is young people forming their own spaces for political engagement that are outside of political parties. And so our next speaker has actually done that. Dr. Paul Budau has started a project, besides being a senior lecturer at the Department of Public Constitutional and International Law at UNISA, which is really important, guys. To have two young people who have PhDs who are teaching at senior lectures, by the way, is not a small thing. 15 years ago, this was not happening. But he is also the founder and project leader of Civic and Voter Education Law Project. And this is young people taking charge and creating their own spaces outside of formal politics to engage on these issues. So, Paul.
Thank you so much, Tessa. And good day, everyone. I will start by indicating that the project which I have established at UNISA, the Civic and Voter Education Law Project, it is as a result of my experience as a municipal outreach coordinator. I served as a municipal outreach coordinator for the IEC based at Musina local municipality. Yes. So with that experience, that's how I created the community engagement project of Civic and Voter Education Law Project at UNISA. Yeah. And Me Nkaru Mateta, maybe you might recall me from the 2018 Provincial Conference of the Municipal Outreach Coordinators and Democracy Education Facilitators, which was held at Mahubas Kloof. I presented on the legal system that relates to electoral systems. Yes. So my presentation is actually from a legal perspective, particularly from a human rights standpoint. Then the information which the youth needs to know is actually emanating from Section 32 of the Constitution and Section 19. They provide for the right to information and the right to political participation. And the state has got 4 responsibilities: the duty to respect, protect, promote, and fulfill the right to information and also the right to political participation. And the IEC itself, it is the main constitutional body that has been established under Chapter 9 of the Constitution, that it needs to promote constitutional democracy and ensure that people are able to fulfill their right to participate into elections. And at regional level, we do have the African Charter, the African Youth Charter under Article 11, which requires state parties to promote participation into elections, as well as the African Charter on Democracy, Elections and Governance under Article 12. Then the IEC has been doing a very excellent job in terms of ensuring that it is fulfilling its constitutional duty. It's just that in most cases, you find that due to the digital divide, as my predecessor in speaking here has indicated, that South Africa is also struggling with digital divide. What is digital divide? It's when there is unequal access and usage of technological devices. So the funny thing is, in as much as there is an increase in terms of their usage as well as internet penetration, there is a decrease in voter turnout. What's happening is the more people are using technology, there are some who take advantage of misinformation and disinformation. And these are some of the things that are actually questioning into the credibility of the IEC. And it's something which is not actually sustainable, especially when we want to ensure that at the end of the day, the IEC is able to retain its status of being an independent institution that holds credible elections. The decrease in voter turnout does not actually mean the youth are not engaged into elections. They resort into other non-conventional means, such as Occupy movements, and an increase on the use of social media as a new platform for political engagement. On the other side, the decline of voter turnout, it also comes with the high number of political parties that are participating in elections. In this year's elections, we had the highest number of parties that participated. The number is actually 70. Imagine, 70. And these parties, they, as part of what I know, the IEC has stakeholder management processes where they engage with political parties. I think it is in such platforms where you can try to encourage other politicians that in as much as you want to be in government, you must also look at the implications of you having to increase the number of political parties, because it leads to democracy being put at risk. It also leads to voter apathy, because in as much as people are unable to find clear evidence as to how the increase in political parties is actually helping them in terms of service delivery and even in terms of strengthening the quality of elections. Ladies and gentlemen, South Africa is becoming a highly urbanized country. And the United Nations has estimated that by 2030, 71.3% of South Africa's population will be living in urban areas. And by 2050, 80% of the people will be living in urban areas. And the main areas that targets is Gauteng, eThekwini, and Cape Town. And these are the places which are highly advanced, including in terms of usage of digital technology. So the question is, if there is an increase in technological use and there is high urbanization, does this mean in future the trend of having low voter turnouts, is it because of the people who are actually concentrated in the cities? This is something which we need to also engage on. Because in as much as people are becoming highly urbanized, they are the same people who have more access to digital technology more than those who are in rural areas. And when they use this technology, they use it in order to discourage others from participating in elections. So we need to look at the intersectionality of urbanization, digital technology usage, as well as elections, which is something that is very much crucial. Then myself, I could recommend that we could look at robust fact-checking mechanisms, increase media literacy, and effective regulation of social media to protect human rights, because there is a need to balance the right to information for those who do not have the knowledge as to why they should participate in elections, as well as the rights of those who need to express themselves, because those who express themselves, they could actually misinform and disinform those who are actually supposed to be aware of why they should participate in elections. Then I did try to conduct some research and look at some of the reasons which the youth are indicating that why they are not participating in elections. So the ones which I got so far, it's 8. The first one is voter apathy. The second one is distrust in the electoral processes and democratic institutions. The third one is political disfranchisement and polarizations, economic delusionment as the fourth one, and the fifth one is demographic changes, and the sixth one is inadequate civic and voter education provision, and the seventh is the sense of powerlessness, and the last one is logistical barriers. Some of them has been alluded to by the chair of the commission. Then, my last recommendation is to look at the possibility of utilizing electronic voting. Ladies and gentlemen, in 2020, the IEC started with the efforts to ensure that they push towards electronic voting. And in 2021, the Electoral Amendment Bill made attempts to ensure that they push for electronic voting. It's just that the Portfolio Committee for Home Affairs, they rejected the bill. In particular, clause 14, that are intended to ensure that the IEC might prescribe a different way of method as per the 1998 Electoral Act And the second clause, which was rejected, was clause 14, that intended to that the IEC could introduce electronic voting even under the Local Government Municipal Electoral Act. And I believed that maybe the IEC could have been given the chance to explain its position in full, because the committee argued that the IEC cannot deal with such matters alone. It needs to engage with the relevant bodies that deals with legislative amendments. But what I believe, or I wish I could commend the IEC, is to taking the initial efforts to ensure that this amendment is actually brought into place. Chair, I could encourage you to, again, try to engage with the government, propose the bill again, so that we push for electronic voting. Seriously. And obviously, if we're to, okay, let us propose that we can have a pilot electronic voting. This could start at least at tertiary level when there are SRC elections, and we see how this could be done. Because the IEC has got the tertiary civic and democracy education, which is being held at tertiary levels. And we at UNISA, we've established the Civic and Voter Education Project. We could try to engage on this and see if whether it is possible. And UNISA, obviously, it is an open distance institution. We look at how our students could be used as pilot first voters for electronic project. Thank you so much.
That was a very practical suggestion to end this first half of the session. So I want to allow for about 15 minutes of Q&A. So I'm going to take 4 hands. I know there was a hand already over there. Can I note a second hand here, a third hand, and then a final hand at the back, and then we'll see how far that takes us. I'm going to ask us to keep our inputs to about a minute in questions, just so that we can get as many voices into the room as possible. So you can begin. I don't know. Do we have a roving mic? There we go.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is the mic working, comrades? And we're all comrades here, no? Comrade is not a political affiliation.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. But I think it is important that I must introduce myself and my position. I am the provincial election coordinator of Mkondo, which is the party. And the first statement that I want to put to you, Chair, is that it is very unfortunate that our party and its effort to bring the IEC into court is being tried in a forum like this. That is unfortunate. But I will respond to the issue that we raised there. We view, and our position still remain, that the IEC has stolen our vote. And we will continue to pursue that matter in court. That is the position that we are not going to change. But what is disappointing, comrade, is that we are told that there are 1/3 of the democratic countries in the world which are not practicing or valuing the concept of democracy. This is a Western concept of democracy. Russia is a democratic country because the citizens there, they can benefit from the social and economic outcome of that country. We go to vote every day and we get nothing. Let me give you an example. If you take Polokwane, there was a law during apartheid that said black people, not black, African people cannot own property in town. That law is still applying now because the property is moving from one race to another and we are being excluded. The land is still in the hands of people who stole our identity. They call themselves Afrikaner and they call us blacks. And we cannot allow that. But the issue that I want to emphasize is that you cannot, in this era, when you are faced with more than 30 countries, 30 parties, lodging complaints about the IEC, and you move to electronic voting, it cannot happen. because there is no trust. I ran the elections of MK Party, and I can tell you things that happened. You know, the chairperson, the commissioner depends on the papers that were submitted to him and say, this is the result of the station. There is an IEC manager who expelled party agents in the voting stations, work on the ballot boxes, and then submit to the commissioner as a true reflection of what happened in the voting station. Some of the voting station managers of the IEC were biased, and they took advantage that some of the political parties do not have the political party
agents
at the particular stations. And then they rig the elections, and what the commissioner gets is what is happening on the paper. But what is on the paper is not the reflection of what happens. So those are the issues that I think we need to raise. The issue of electronic voting, it will create chaos.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Where's our second hand? Just move the mic to the front. 2, 3, and then 4.
Good day, everyone. Well, I would like to understand, okay, looking at the background from where I'm from, when you ask about the youth about the participation, why are they not participating? They will definitely tell you IEC belongs to certain party, right? Which is, that is their perspective. But the perspectives come from where? Looking at the news, you can see ballots are missing, numbers are being leaked. So now there's a talk about electronic voting. Which security measures are you going to implement to prevent that?
Please use your mic
I want
at your mouth. Excuse.
okay. I was saying, looking at the conversation that we are having as youth, if you ask them why are they not participating in voting, they will tell you straightforward, IEC belongs to a certain party, right? That is their perspective. Due to what? The perception that is brought forward from the news. Remember, Mr. said perception is more like reality. So the news shows us, okay, ballots are missing. The numbers have been rigged. So now there's a talk about electronic voting, right? So when we move to electronic voting, which security measures are you going to implement to prevent something that is happening physically? So are there any, because yes, there are talks, it's good, electronic voting, it will reach everyone, but which security measures? They are not mentioned.
Sure. It's just in front of you, and then there's a hand at the back, and then we'll get some responses.
Hello, everybody. I'm Joanna Pullen from the Freedom Front Plus. I'm the media officer and PPLC representative, and also a former lecturer at Waterberg FET College. I have a question, or I'd like your opinion, Dr. Lerodi. I'm wondering, the way SRC elections are run, how does that influence attitude toward politics? I'd like to know how true this rings for you. Thank you.
All right, and then there's one more hand at the back. If we can just, I'll come back in the second round, ma'am. In the corner at the back, and then I'm gonna have responses, and then have a second round. I see there are a few hands.
Okay, greetings everyone. My name is Lizalo Bekina from the University of Limpopo doing honors.
Yeah, just closer to your mouth.
Okay, doing honors in international politics. The first, Dr. Lerodi did mention that Limpopo is a rural province, right? And then I need to take it from where she said that Limpopo is a rural province. We need to consider the fact that most of the people in Limpopo, especially in rural areas, let me give an example from where I'm coming from, at Tagamale. In a case where you wanna get connectivity, go to and maybe apply for jobs at a certain place, you have to travel to Polokwane in order to get that done. So my question to the IEC is that maybe a suggestion or maybe a recommendation is that the IEC need to look at these factors while looking into the topic of the usage of technology in exploring technological literacy. And my second, rather an opinion, goes to the second speaker. The second speaker did say that there need to be a pilot that the IEC need to have, maybe in terms of like looking at how, maybe looking if the IEC need to do a pilot project wherein they do more like an implementation to see how they work in terms of like the SRC elections. There are quite a number of institutions in the country, universities, colleges, which use online voting. And I can tell you what, I don't want to mention names, but there are discrepancies in those in the election process wherein a particular party gets the vote of a certain party, and then rather in some instances you might find that the other political party did not have a certain candidate participating in that particular position, but the person is there. So the IEC need to kind of look into that. And then the other question is, how can we balance the benefit of technology with concerns about security? What are the and another question is, what are the implications in emerging technology? Thank you.
Thank you. I may have to limit our questions to one at a time because, but I also don't want to stifle debate. I think that there are at least three people who are, if we can give Mr. Mwape a mic, and I think maybe you should start. Okay.
Thank you, Tessa. And Ndate Marimane, I hope I get this right. I will never hang dirty linen in public. I never do that. You as a party, if I was running business, you're a client. I'm never going to find my client in public, but I'll tell them when they're wrong. I'll do that without fear, without favor, and without prejudice. And I understand that you raise these issues. I want to say for the record that I never spoke of a particular party. You are not the only party that has taken us to court on similar facts, and I acknowledge that. And having said so, I want to embrace the things that you say. We cannot live aloof from where your perceptions and your views are. And so I want to embrace the fact that you raise these issues. People might think they're awkward, I might think they're awkward, but they're important for democracy. The issues we have with parties that we are in court about are matters of record. We have responded on record. They were filed on record. We did not take parties to court. They have taken us, and we are responding to their records. I don't want to bring them here. The point I wanted to make was, I am saying, are they easy? No. Do I like them? Not necessarily. But for the sake of democracy, they are absolutely crucial. My colleagues in the province at national office get it from me that every one of the independent candidates and the parties we serve, we must serve with distinction, yourselves included. And so I want to say to you, when I praise you, I'm going to do it publicly. But when we fight, I'm going to close the door, and I'm going to pull punches too. That's what we do. I know you do, and I don't mean it in a bad way. I'm saying the thing that we need to work on, we need to find each other. And I embrace what you say. I don't necessarily agree, but I hear you, and I think we've got to limit the distance. We've got to come closer. And for me, I serve people like you. even if they don't agree. I must serve them and find each other on. I want to say the following, and I don't know, Abutaka, you know, Tessa will do well if we ask them to tell us, their names so that we. My brother is saying there is a perception that IEC is ANC. I deny that perception, but yeah, okay. Whatever it is, whatever it is, I'm saying to you that we are not. Yeah. No, folks, let's come back. Let's come back. We're all South Africans. An average South African is politically aware, absolutely aware. Do we have people in this institution that have served in political parties? Yes, we do. Is this institution acting in a partisan manner? I say no. Do we have a code of conduct for the people that work in this institution? Absolutely. And so I say to you that I understand when people say sometimes the line is not what we see from where we are. I say raise it with us. Where you have raised issues of IEC staff that are partisan, we have never doubted to deal with them. I personally have removed a lot of people on that basis alone. So I have a clear understanding and appreciation of where perception impacts the credibility of the institution. The last thing, Tessa, wanted to respond to is this institution, one of the things we do, and I'm very proud of it because we work on it. If there's an area of the work we do that consumes a large portion of my time and energy, is to ensure that the integrity of the work we do is beyond reproach. We invest in this area extensively when we go to elections. If you say that people at the voting stations ensure that we act in a partisan manner, I then say, you know, not only do we have party agents that we rely on, we also place the results in the public's hand. We say it doesn't matter where you are. You can use technology from all over the world to lodge objections. Some of the objections we had in this election were not lodged in South Africa, yet we still looked at them. Why? Because they were online. The results were online. Everything was online. That's what we do to ensure the integrity. And if all of us in the commission get it wrong, and all of us as citizens miss that error, I accept that that is an error that will remain unattended. But if anyone, anywhere in the world, finds that error, we'll fix it. Thank you, Tess.
Right, Dr. Lafodi, Dr. Muda, don't you want to, you can respond from there, because you have a mic. Your mic is on?
So is it fine?
Yeah.
Is it fine? Thank you. Yes, I'm going to respond to the question of SRC elections attitude and how they get to influence politics. Look, I think universities are a microcosm of society. And if you look at the national and provincial elections that we had, you know, there were quite enough, there are students who vote, who have, like universities have voting stations, and, you know, young people go there to cast their votes. And of interest, I'm sure you saw during elections, because of the long queues, the EFF had a Mlungisi Madonsela battalion, which, you know, encouraged young people to come and vote, you know, in universities. I remember when we was in our queues, I was not voting at the university, but, you know, you'd see in our WhatsApp groups, you know, these young people offered comrades went to these voting stations to offer young people coffee, amongst other things. And we know that way
one way or another does, assist or influence, young people as to who gets to, or who they get to vote for, right? And another thing with SRC elections, there's a student that we are having at TEF who, is doing her MA, and she's arguing that, SRC, prepares these young people for leadership positions after, leaving universities. So I think also, this SRC elections do get to influence, politics, in general. And I think, one of the students who, posed a question, it's a student who's doing her honors at the University of Limpopo, and I just want to thank the IEC for extending the invitation to some of the students who write on elections to come and, learn from this engagement. Thank you.
Dr. Mudau?
I hope it's,
Yes, it
it's
is.
working now. Thanks. Yeah, I think I can start with some of the issues that were raised by a member of the MK party. I know that the chair has answered, but I think I feel the edge to also provide some. He mentioned something along the democracy that is functioning in Russia. What I just need to inform him is that there is a huge difference between the Russian democracy and the South African democracy. Here, we have got a genuine democratic electoral democracy. In Russia, they have what is called authoritarian or electoral dictatorship. They do have elections on regular basis as per their law. However, these are regular sham elections. They do not actually reflect the genuine will of the people, unlike in South Africa, where the IEC is actually engaged in a neutral and objective manner of managing elections. And he mentioned something along the issues in Polokwane, where the municipality is failing to amend an apartheid law. Some of the issues which we raise here, yes, it's fine, they can be raised. However, they need to be engaged with the relevant body, the Polokwane municipality. Because in terms of the Spatial Planning and Land Use Management Act, the law does not prohibit even RDP houses from being built in the main city cores, even in well-located areas. The municipality can do so by just ensuring that they do the rezoning of places, and they allow even vulnerable black people to have access to well-located land, like any other person who are actually privileged white people. And another thing is the lack of trust in the IEC. What I can advise the IEC is, during heightened electoral activity times, you employ extra expansion staff, like municipal outreach coordinators, democracy education facilitators. These people, isn't that in terms of law, they are not supposed to be members of political parties, I think in the last 5 years or 10. It's just that most of them, they are compromised. They have been members of certain political parties, and when they come, you don't look at their records. And these are actually the people who are actually putting the IEC's credibility into risk, because they come with their own intentions. Even the cases which have happened, that there was someone who took ballot papers to their own homes. These are people who are already compromised, just that you don't know yourself, and you don't conduct credibility checks on expansion staff members. And I know that it's something which is tough, but just look at how you could resolve this when going forward. There is another question from the student from the University of Limpopo who speaks about pilot electronic voting that are being conducted for SRC elections in TEFLOP or in other universities. The institutions that have been given the task to manage those elections, I don't think they are functioning at the level which the IEC is. The IEC is given the constitutional and legal mandate to manage elections in a free and fair manner. And I guess those, the universities or the tertiary institutions, they are just giving the task to any other body which they believe that could conduct elections. And their failures does not actually reflect what the IEC could do when it comes to electronic voting. I think judging the IEC's prospect in terms of managing electronic voting based on the experience of private organizations that are given the similar tasks, I don't think it's actually something that it could be sustainable. And the balancing of technology and security, I believe that the IEC, from my experience, I believe that the IEC could handle electronic elections in a fair manner. The chair has indicated that even in the recently concluded 2024 elections, there were always 30 million attempts to invade the system and none succeeded. Then they could try to replicate the same in the e-voting system. Yes. Thank you.
So there's two more hands I'm going to take in this round. That I'm going to ask you to come back in the next session. I just want us to get all of our speakers out the way so then we can have a finalized. So I'm noting a hand there, the lady with the yellow, and then the gentleman at the back, right at the back. And then I'm noting these two hands for your first bites at the cherry afterwards. I just want us to get our other speakers also in the conversation and then we can have a more robust engagement.
Thanks very much, Chair. I just want to make an input to check whether the colleagues from University of Limpopo and the University of the UNISA, whether they've ever considered doing an analysis or even a research why even at tertiary levels there is low for voter turnout. Yeah. You find in University of Limpopo, if you've got maybe 20,000 students, only 5,000 went to vote. So for me, technology is one important thing that can be utilized, and we're at the level that IEC at any time can be ready to utilize technology. And we expect the young people, because they've got access of everything. It's not like they don't have access. If we can now register electronically, we can still vote electronically. And the majority of people that vote are only the adult people who were there 1994, they were there 1999, because they understand the reasons of voting. Why do our young people really don't have interest in voting? It's not only, for me, the perception I hear it, whether the IEC or not, but at school, that is where they must have interest of changing the environment where they live and having interest of voting. So I just want to check whether, do we have any kind, because if we can't transform our own youth people to understand the politics of where they live, because I as well even challenge them to say, if the universities cannot produce the skill we need in the economy, we'll continue to have a problem. So for me, the institutions need to play a critical role. Firstly, changing the kind of society we have, but the young people must have interest. Why then do I have interest even at the level of tertiary level? Thanks.
And then there's one more hand right at the back. And then we'll take inputs and we'll move to our next two speakers, and then we'd be able to just take all the hands we can manage.
Thanks very much. My name is Blessing Mukonto from University of Limpopo. So my question will be directed to IEC and other political parties in general. For example, in South Africa, when you need a job, they say you must at least have 3-year experience in order to occupy a certain position. Now the IEC come to say we are registering political parties. Which experience is required from those political parties that they have served the public before they are registered? Because these people are going to serve us without experience. Just because their leader was leading in the previously, now they must go in. There is no proof that these people are capable of leading us as a country. For example, as youth, we are working as youth, political parties, IEC, they expect a lot from us, while they don't give us a lot. At University of Limpopo, we have online elections, but students are not entertaining that thing. Because why? Our SRC levy is directed to bashes. It does not address our issues. So these political parties, they must address our issues before they are on the ballot. After being on the ballot, they said they are working on the ground. What do? They give us fake t-shirts. They give us a plate. and expect us to give them a vote. The youth is sober. Even if you can take IEC election online, they won't vote. Address their issues first.
Yeah.
We are not working. We are not working. We are not funded. But you must go and vote. Why must I vote? They say they encourage education, but you don't have funding. They don't even fund our research. At the end of the day, you must go there and vote. I can't vote for a plate and a T-shirt. And they don't give us the T-shirt they are wearing here. They give us those other T-shirts. The ones they are wearing here, they can't give you those T-shirts. They can't. That golf, they can't. So even in the SRC elections, people who are voting, it's comrades and their girlfriends. For them to get what? Those iPhones, those suits. So as youth, we are sober, even if you can take elections online. First, address our issues. We are going to vote for you, even manually. Thank you.
All right. Do any of the panelists want to? Do any of the panelists want to do a quick response? I've noted hands in the room. What I'm going to do is take a few responses. Let our second panelist do their presentation. Then we have more freedom to talk. Yeah. So I just want to hear if there's any responses from the panelists who have spoken now to what we've heard.
Yeah, I'll respond to the question here on, why is it that, has anybody ever studied on, SRC voter turnout? And I think Mkhonto did respond partly to that question to say, some of the reasons why young people don't vote is because they don't see, these candidates who want to go to the SRC going to, address their challenges that they're facing, right? And it's not something new. I mean, even when I was a student, we believed that people wanted to go into office for blazers, right? And now we're celebrating the 65th anniversary of UL, and some students also did mention these things to say the people who want us to vote for them is because they want iPhones, and I think that's also what Mkhonto was saying. There's even a slogan to say one vote, one plate, right, for a plate of meal, right?
Yeah.
And it's because, even young people feel like the people that they have to vote for are not addressing their key, issues, right? But I think it's the question is a very interesting project, and I see Mkhonto's really cauterized on elections. So maybe for his MA, he'll consider voter turnout in SRCs. Thank you.
So I think we're going to round it off there for now. And I'm going to ask my next two speakers who are going to jointly present. They are both associate professors at Univen, Professor Dimberi and Professor Chari. They'll present together for about 20 minutes in total, and then we'll be able to open up. What I think is important about this is it starts addressing some of the questions we've had in the room around the question about who are these young people we are talking about. Let's understand them a little bit better and understand their relationship to technology and politics may not be as simplistic as we have been talking about today. So I think this is going to be interesting.
Greetings, colleagues. Ndatem Sutu. I don't envy your position. That's the least thing I would ever want to be in life. Yeah. It's quite interesting, the issue, the reason why we are here is to understand the non-participation of the youth in elections. But what is coming out now is more like preemptive, because we are hearing things about the judicialization of elections, where we have more of courts than ballot decisions. I think it's a theme for another day. What we got from Mr. Simon was a free kick to say we want to explore how technology can be harnessed to increase youth voter participation. So colleagues, we are still at an exploration stage. Nothing has been implemented. We are just brainstorming. So let's not shoot ourselves on the foot. Let's just try and see how we maneuver with this proposal. And the main reason is we should be asking ourselves, why the youth? We have adult voters, Magogo voters, but why the youth specifically? I think that's the million-dollar question that we should be asking ourselves. So myself and Tendai, my colleague, we decided to do it the wrestling way, to partner, to try and pick and unpack this whole thing about youth non-participation in elections. So we thought of calling it harnessing technology to increase youth participation in elections. So from my side, I'm technologically challenged already. Okay, let me put on slideshow, okay?
Why we don't trust technology.
Yeah. Okay. So I like the fact that this is a conversation. When you are having a conversation, you are exploring and try to find each other. So nothing is binding yet. So we should not be worried. And those suggestions about security, they are very important. But now we are at the preliminary stages. So maybe for our presentation, some of the entry questions are how can technology be leveraged to foster youth participation in elections? How can we use technology to make voting fashionable to the youth? We had so many concerns from the youth, but we don't look down upon those concerns. But because you are the click-up generation, you are always on apps, on technology, how can you use the same facility or platform to participate in election? So the other question is, what are the disruptive approaches that can be adopted? The moment we start talking about technology in elections that have been conducted conventionally using manual approaches, and you are now thinking of infusing technology, it's a disruptive approach. We have a challenge of the youth who are not voting manually. So we are following you, the youth. You like technology, so we are coming to you through your technology. So we are disrupting ourselves. We want to change the manner in which we do things. So this is the crack of the story as we try to, where is that arrow now? So, unfortunately, this computer is giving me problems. The way we organized our discussion with Tendai, we organized it in two parts. We thought Madam Chair was going to give us enough time so that we have a strong interactive process. But we'll try to work within the time limits, considering the interruptions also from technology. Can I use for up and down? This one. Okay. So, thanks to the organizers for involving the youth, because this whole story is about the youth. I was going to get worried if we were going to flood this room with elderly people or magogos. the message is specifically for the youth. So that's why we say youth vote matters. And we want to understand why it matters. So I'm going to talk about the reason why we want to discuss these election stories through the prism of the youth. What is so special or so peculiar about the youth? And Tendai will address the modalities that can be put in place to harness technology. So, the attempt to try to give a post-mortem, a miniskirt type of analysis of the post-elections. From my point of view, the elections were generally peaceful. Opposition parties made some inroads and substantial gain in securing seats. But a commendable post-election development is the idea of a coalition government, which I found to be very, very important because it solved a crisis that was looming of not having a government. And also it defined South Africa in terms of its democratic standing. It's a mature democracy. However, there are several lessons that can be drawn from the recent election, and quite conspicuous is what they've identified, the challenge of youth voter turnout, which was very low. There are several statistics that have been provided from the reports of the IEC to show that there is a progression or a tendency or a system or a pandemic that is developing from 2016, 2021, now 2024, where the youth are playing hands-off approach to elections, which is a serious concern. So the disengagement by the youth in politics or elections should not be overlooked because it threatens democracy. It's an assault on democratic consolidation. When we talk about democratic systems strengthening and you have a youth that is not participating in elections, then it's a contradiction in terms and practice. So the youth's declining interest in the country's politics may be attributed to several reasons, and thank God we had an eyewitness and spokesperson who said a lot about the youth's concerns, and we should not look down upon those concerns. We cannot talk about technology before we understand those concerns. They are very, very important. We should not trivialize them. There is, from our literature survey that we conducted, there is this culture that we see in political parties where age restrictions are imposed to disenfranchise the youth from contesting for political office, limited rights in political parties, treating the youth as passive subjects. They are more like treated as second-class citizens because their role is being reduced to that of voting. And it's very, very dangerous. We had the issue of poverty, economic marginalization, unemployment. And when you look even at the cost of nominating candidates, the cost of just registering to contest, it's not reachable for the youth. And those are serious issues. We have those hegemonic socio-cultural traditions within political parties where we say this political party is a preserve of the old. It's very, very toxic and dangerous because we look at the youth as mafikizulu, which is very dangerous in as far as democratic consolidation is concerned. Issues of gatekeeping political leaders and political parties. It's a challenge because once they are allergic to young blood within their political formations, then that can also translate to non-participation by the youth. It's very, very serious, and we should not look down upon or trivialize such issues. Our election management bodies, you need to keep oiling yourself to make sure that in the discharge of your duties, you make the process user-friendly, you reduce the complexities so that the youth possibly can be attracted to voting. These youth, we heard them talking, fortunately. They also have some individual obstacles or determinants on their own, which has nothing to do with the IEC. When they don't trust their political institutions, it's a danger. It's a serious danger. You are a political institution presiding over the youth and the nation, but you are not trusted. So, lack of confidence, social and economic exclusion, those are some of the challenges that are coming out. But the reason why we are focusing on the youth is just because South Africa, like any other African country, the population is relatively youthful. Almost 70% of the population is youthful. And this is attributed to what we call youth bulge. We have an increasing number of large population in every African country, South Africa included. But now think of a situation where that youth bulge is not participating in elections. That is why the IEC guys are actually approaching this whole issue of elections through the prism of the youth and based on reality on the ground. So if we don't harness the youth bulge, we are likely to experience what we call youth quake. Already we hear the disgruntlement. It's very, very important that we take the demographic dividend and make sure that they participate in all the other processes of the nation, including elections. We have seen how some countries like China, Singapore, South Korea, have actually converted those demographic dividends by trying the youth bulge, by trying to make it a dividend, investing in their youth, making sure that they are well represented, they are capacitated, so that they feel belonging. Because what we see here is the challenge of belonging. When they are excluded, they don't feel belonging. So it's something that we should seriously consider. We have seen that youth in South Africa has been historically active in politics. We can talk from the Sharperville, Soweto uprising. They've been the vanguard of the liberation. So when they are not participating today, I think this seminar came at a very special time, just for us to reflect and rethink our approaches. And that explains why talking about harnessing technology is very, very important. I think even the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, it names youth as critical agents of change. So when we talk about social change, social innovators, change makers, change agents, innovation champions who are not participating in elections, how do you participate in that which you have not been part of? So I think it creates the imperative for us to ensure that at least if they are not going manual, why don't we catch them through technology? I think I've been trying to summarize my presentation. There's a lot that we wanted to say, but my extraordinary timekeeper is saying we should move into the practicals, which I think Tendai will try to address. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Good afternoon, colleagues. All protocol observed. I just want to pick the conversation from where Patrick left and talk about harnessing technology for youth participation in elections. The key question is, how can technology be harnessed for youth participation in elections? But we reckon that to address this question, we need to understand the demographic and psychographic characteristics of the youth that we are talking about. I think the information is available that the youth that we are talking about belong to two categories, namely millennials, that is Generation Y, because part of the so-called youth that we are referring to now, they belong to, they fall within that age range, 19, partly, because the 90s, starting from the 90s. And the second one is the Generation Z, the digital natives, also referred to as NetGen, neo-digital natives, internet generation. And that is very important because it is a distinguishing factor. It speaks to the fact, it speaks to the culture or subculture of these people. And we need to understand that subculture in order to deploy technology to make them get interested in technology. Otherwise, if we do not understand the subculture of the people that we are talking about, then we might be shooting, we might be firing blanks all the time, because there might be a wrong assumption that simply dumping information on these young people will make them get interested in elections, but that is not the case. You can bring a helicopter load of flyers and just throw them, hoping that they will land on someone. And that someone will read them, they get interested, but that is not what happens in practice. So why do we need to understand the culture and the attributes of these people that we are talking? They are the first to have grown up with access to internet and digital technology from a very young age, hence the name digital natives. You could say that their first toy was a mobile phone. You see, so we must understand that. What does that mean? As a lecturer at the University of Venda, I have seen things changing. But up until I started looking at this topic, I did not think about certain things like when I started teaching at the University of Venda in 2008, my students used to come to class, with notebooks, bags, and so on. Then later on, around, around 2015, they were coming to class with laptops only, just laptops. But I realized that recently they are now just coming they are coming from the bedroom, they are coming from the bathroom going to the bedroom. They just walk like this. And they'll be like, so, and you are supposed to be presenting today. Why are you coming like, that's me thinking. Why are you coming like that? You are just like this. And then when they are requested to present, what do? Okay, they bring out, they say, okay, they start presenting. Okay, so these are the changes that are taking place. So what other changes do we anticipate, or should we anticipate in terms of, the generational changes that are taking place, and that these changes that are being instigated by technology? So it is very important. So they spend more time on electronic devices and less time on reading books than before. And this has got serious implications because they have this leads to a low attention span and low vocabulary. They primarily communicate by text or voice. They are growing up in high-choice media environment. High-choice media environment means the legacy media. It means all this cacophony of media, social media, YouTube and all that. That's high-choice media. Is it a bad thing? We don't know. Is it a good thing? We don't know whether it is a good thing. But the point is that they have got unlimited choices as far as media is concerned. But how does that change them? It changes them in the sense, how does it affect their participation in politics or participation in elections? Now, the idea of opting out has been facilitated by multiple media. Whereas you had one newspaper in the house, dad has finished reading, sister reading. Now you have multiple, so you can easily opt out. You can opt out, and studies show that when it comes to opt out, can I get assistance in terms of? Okay, thank you very much. So this directly leads to the paradox of high choice. We have high choice now, many choices in terms of media. There's need, but in fact, the reality is that the probability of news avoidance has increased. And the major casualty of the type of news is political news. So of all the news that is being avoided, the most avoided is political news. What are the implications? The implications are that youth are disengaging and are can actually use the technology to disengage from politics, which is also negative implications for democracy. So the explanation for the paradox, we will not go to that, but we need to understand, okay, there are more now opportunities to increase, to opt out. The abilities of the citizens or the youth to opt out of news have been increased. There are shifts in citizenship norms. I've already referred to the kind of shifts that I've experienced personally, but there are deeper shifts in terms of, young people being less oriented towards institutional politics, less inclined to participate in elections for several reasons. Some of the reasons have been given, but this is the reality. So when we talk about technology, we must not necessarily look at it as a magic bullet for transforming or for increasing youth participation. We must also look at the other, look at technology from another angle so that we are able to circumvent or to manage, technology for the purposes that we want. Because at the end of the day, technology is socially constructed, it is made by people. The reason why we have maybe 3,000 apps on our phones and we only use WhatsApp or mobile app is precisely because of that. This is what the youth are also doing. Yes, they know they can, but what are they using technology for? We need to understand. And so that we're actually able to, so given these realities, what are we suggesting? What are we proposing? We need to address the following. How can technology be leveraged to foster youth participation? How can we use it to make voting fashionable? Because it is no longer fashionable to the youth. So what we are suggesting is that elections must be conducted, or elections conducted in digital times should actually bring about a disruptive approach to technology, and we need to consider these, to use technology for engagement purposes, technology as voting tools. Some of the things are already being done. Because, for example, voting tools, technology as a voting tool and resources, but we need to consider others. Gamification, for example. Young people, because this is why we are emphasizing understanding youth culture, so that we operate within the terrain of youth culture. The content, the political content must be infused with the other content. The most looked for or most consumed content by the youth, entertainment, sport, what have you. But it doesn't mean that sport is apolitical. It doesn't mean that sport and politics are separate. They can actually work together. You can work together. an athlete, a superstar, can actually be, an electoral management board can work with sports persons, celebrities in their programs. Because these are their role models. The role models of the youth are not the Madalas and anymore. These are people who drive big cars and, flash cars and things. Those are their role models. And that, we must come to terms with that reality. So if we know their role models, we must probably incorporate those role models for purposes of infusing some interest in politics, because there cannot be any engagement without interest. First, because what comes first is interest or attention. Then from attention, engagement. Engagement, participation. That's how it works. So this is probably what we need to consider. Education, I'm just rushing through this because I know my time is almost up, or is up already. So this is what we are proposing. MBs can conduct social media campaigns, leveraging social media networks, such as TikTok, because these are very interactive. Their technological affordances will allow the youth to participate because they're interactive. They ask you questions. They talk to you. Unlike legacy media, where you just dump messages. There they can ask questions. They can interrogate you. You see, you can have a conversation. And it is better when communication is dictated by dialogue rather than top-down, where you simply say, okay, this is what, because the youth are simply not interested. You must find alternative or innovative ways of making them interested in politics, make politics fashionable. So they must understand. But just 1 minute, over and above this, we need to understand that democracy is a culture. And a culture cannot be constructed overnight. I'll give you an example. When you are in your car, you are driving, and you throw away litter, and you don't even think about it, that is the way, that it is the same thing as youth who sit at home on election day. They don't think about, they don't see voting as a civic duty. So democracy can be transformed over time. And here we're talking about democracy as a practice. And democracy as a practice, it means it is here, right here in the head. So we normally we should come to a point where we talk about democracy in the head, not on paper. Because democracy in the head, it means we practice. It is what we practice rather than what we say. And all these other things like participation, they must correlate with other factors. There's no way, youth can actually be so interested in participation in a situation where the unemployment rate is so high. It means there's no correlation, because there must be a certain level of development also, meaning economic, but also cultural and practices. And if the practices don't change that much, it means we'll simply be settling on the same place, deceiving ourselves that, we are being democratic. I think that that is very crucial. And time up. Thank you very much, Madam.
Thank you for allowing me to be a dictator. But I'm always sensitive to when we already know we're going to be running over time because we started a bit late, that I don't want the room to empty out slowly. It's always one of those things I want to try and avoid. And also I think the conversation is going to allow us to jump onto some of the issues as well. So I want to go straight into the two hands that I noted. So I noted one hand there and one hand there. and then I noted, and then Dr. that spoke earlier, and then yourself. So let's start with those 4, and then the next round of hands will start to address, I think, also new issues. Oh, it's 5 now. So.
Greetings to the House at large. My name is Linda Ramshava. I'm from the University of Venda, and I'm currently pursuing my honors in international relations. So the topic that I have currently is something that is shows interest towards political education, political representation in rural areas, right? Which I see it fits with what we're discussing today. And through it, this goes to both those of IEC and the political parties that are present with us here today. That perhaps the reason why the youth do not engage this much is because they are not politically educated. Therefore, the IEC and both the political parties shows themselves only during that duration of elections. So how about you start earlier than that and educate the youth of the necessities or the ways around electing, or also the need for you to end up electing, right? And then secondly, let's look at students. I'm going to focus on the side of those that participate in elections, right? They do, let me say, we do participate in elections at tertiaries, but not at home. The reason being that, for one, I did not, when I went to university, Univen by 2021, I didn't really show much interest into politics. Because at a place where I came from, EFF, for example, was not as popular as how it was when I got to the institution. When I got there, and then I show interest towards, let's say, EFF, right? But with how they are tackling things at the university, it's not the same way that is being tackled at home. And because I already have a perspective of the EFF, right, I cannot go home and vote for, let's say, for ANC, because now I start comparing, okay, if those leaders, though they are students, they can be able to do this and this and this. Why are the leaders that have been leading us, let's say, ANC councillors, for example, why are they failing to provide us with this and this and this? So, which leads to us ending up voting at institutions, but not at tertiaries, right? And also, let's say, Prof. Zamiri mentioned something that the youth has been active, let's say, Soweto uprisings, for example, which shows that we're actually wanting for our voice to be heard, right? Looking at the history of how the youth has been trying to reach out, though they are not getting exactly the type of responses that they wish for. What if that is now them pulling up right down is actually a way of saying that we are not heard. So what is the point of us actually going there to engage if at the end of the day we are not heard? And then lastly is a matter of age restriction, right? We're being told that once someone reaches this age, they cannot do this specific job. But let's look at the people that sit in parliament. How old are those people? And how are they, how come they're actually in parliament representing us, the youth, but their ages, you know? Yeah. Especially because as much as we may try to avoid this thing, the reason why you're actually showing interest towards the youth is because it's the youth that ends up leading, or it's the youth that are showing interest in most of the things, right? Yeah. So if it's the youth, how come we are being led by people who are old regarding matters that affect us as the youth?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So just pass Mark. Maybe the thing that we need to change is not the medium. You can pass the mic there. Maybe the thing we need to change is not the medium in which we communicate, but who is communicating and what they are communicating.
Yeah, thank you. Greetings to the House. My name is Ngakusi Chia from Build One South Africa, Bosa. I think as political parties, it's up to us as political parties to make politics fashionable to the youth and for voter education. But now, as I can listen in the House, the youth, they don't have interest anymore in the elections. Like I heard someone saying, manual or electronic, they don't care. Whether they vote manually or they vote electronically. because their challenge is, as political parties, we don't take care of our youth. We don't take care of them. So we say, no, that at the university can see what they're doing. For example, most of the frustration of the students is the NSFAS. And NSFAS, because I was at the University of Limpopo sometimes last week, listening to the problems of the youth. Their problem is NSFAS. And I heard one leader of the one organization say the particular minister is the one who has made the NSFAS to fail. But now the other thing is the experience. I mean, Menkaro Mateta, she can attest to that because I'm always complaining about people are saying that, for example, the Tripartite Alliance, they're a member of the African National Congress. I'm saying it because the commissioner said that, I'm sure I'm the first one to mention the political name. Because he said that there's a perception to say, people are saying IEC is members of the ANC. But in this house, nobody said that, except me and that the confirmation from the commissioner there. Confirmation, he confirmed that. I agree that. Yeah, but now the other thing is the experience of the presiding officer. This thing, the IEC, why is the integrity of the IEC when coming to things of this tripartite? We find that most of the presiding officers are the teachers. And teachers are members of SATU. And SATU is a tripartite alliance to the African National Congress. And when we ask those questions, they say they need experience. The young man mentioned something about an experience. Where other people are going to get the experience? Because the people are not working. People need to work. So here what we are requesting is to say the integrity of the IEC must prevail.
Sure. I'm going to have to ask you to wrap. I can't give you also 10 minutes. And
Okay, no, it's fine. But in closing, I just want to say the IEC must go back and do a research about this electronic voting. Yeah. And as political parties, it's our duty to make fashionable, for the youth to make politics fashionable.
Sure. Appreciate that. There's a hand. Yeah, the hand there.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. My name is Tebo Ho. My question is on this e-voting. What will be the processes? Maybe let me just clarify it to say, if we are to, I understand that is still in the piloting stage or still in the planning stage. My question is on the when it will be implemented. I understand maybe in the next elections or after 20 years or so. But now, while we are still planning on it, what will be the processes to say, are you doing away with the voting stations? Are you doing away with the ballot papers? If you are not doing away with the voting stations, let's say you are planning to say people come to the voting stations, but you're going to use maybe tablets for people to vote, just to click on the party that they're voting for, or as youth or as people who are going to vote from home, I can vote from in bed and just
like your idols.
Yeah. So and then the question on voting from home, remember my vote, my secret. So now if I'm having my uncle, or if are you planning to say is the e-voting for youth only or for everyone? So if it's for everyone, and now I'm having my uncle who can use, or my grandmother who can use technology, I'll vote for them. Thank you so much.
And I think that's really important. Tata, did you still want to come in? Did you still want to come in? Yes. Yeah. So go there, and then I'll see if I can get. No, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to correct.
1 point, no?
Yeah, just 1 point. I talked about China, he talked about Russia. I talked about land security ownership, he talked about special planning. But lastly, my question has not been answered. My question was, do you rely on the ballot paper to confirm the result? And I gave an example that in Mopani, there was a voting station manager who expelled all the party agents and did his work. My last question, Chair, is why should people have trust in the IEC and democracy? When the last election, 60% of the voters voted and say they don't want Ugogo. But Ugogo is ruling. It's undemocratic.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then there's one more hand here in front. There's one more hand here in front. Just follow me. There's a person here you can't see.
Thank you very much. My name is Emmanuel Quinda. Mine is not a question per se, but more of a suggestion, considering the fact that we're trying to find a solution here as to how we can encourage young people to participate in voting. And the suggestion is not necessarily aligned to technology, but I think it can also play a very, where must I go? Oh, sorry. Yeah, so mine is, it's not necessarily aligned to technology, but I think it can play a very huge role in terms of assisting or finding solution to encourage young people to exercise their civil duty in terms of voting. And I would like to find out from IEC and even our learned colleagues there if whether it has ever crossed their mind to say, I mean, it's a fact. Majority, if you look at people who are abusing alcohol, I will talk about alcohol specifically. Majority of them is young people. It's young people. And with the experience that I have in terms of covering elections, there are a number of young people that I've talked to before elections who say, are you going to vote tomorrow? And they were very confident to say, yes, I'm going to vote. But what happened is, a day before election, I mean, for them, tomorrow is holiday, by the way, they will go and drink, hoping that tomorrow they will be able to wake up and go and vote. Come tomorrow morning, they wake up, they are tired. But no, we'll go in the afternoon. Come afternoon, then the day is over. So with the powers that be, maybe SIEC, I suggest that you can talk to the powers that be to see if it is possible to say that a day before elections, maybe no alcohol sales, even on the day, and then, yeah, maybe it can assist. I don't know.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, so anyone from the panel want to respond to anything that's been said? Yeah. Please put on the panel's mics. Noted. Yeah, I can't hear you.
Hello?
Please put the panel's mics on. Can you speak?
Hello.
Okay, come here.
Coming up.
I'm saying come here.
I just want to react to the previous speaker. You raised something that is so touching about the way our youth are indulged in alcohol. It's not only a South African crisis. They drink alcohol Monday to Friday. Whether it's Easter holiday, it's Heroes Day, it's election day, whatever. I think if we want to say alcohol is the problem, we'll be missing the point. People drink alcohol for several reasons. These youth, they are actually getting solace in alcohol. because in their psychic system, they are dealing with a lot. And election day for them is just another extended holiday. We are dealing with an attitude problem here. We have students. Why is it that the same youth, when they are coming to class, they don't drink? It's an attitude problem. Because if we can do proper mobilization, utilize whatever system or technology is available as we are trying to explore, they'll actually give high value to elections. So now to say we want IEC to negotiate with the business world to close sources of alcohol, my brother, I think IEC will be now operating beyond the bounds of their of their mandate. Thank you.
Dada, do you want to respond to anything?
I must thank you all for these tough questions. Linda, I appreciate your thoughts, and I think I accept your submission. That is why we're here. It is because we accept, you see, you that are students and those that educate will know that when you're going to write an exam that you fear, if the papers are late and you can still revise, you will want to take that opportunity. Civic and democracy education is like that. We can never have it done and complete and say we are happy, we're no longer doing it. And anyone that can contribute towards that is most welcome. But that's why this session is important. So I take that challenge, I embrace it on behalf of the Commission. Ntatesiji, you started well. I don't want to say you finished badly. I'm saying you started well. I accept that, this Commission can never go and do education and parties just campaign. We have nothing to offer a voter other than administer a thing. Parties have to convince voters to come out in their numbers and to vote for them. And I accept what you say. You've got to make voting fashionable. Political parties must make politics fashionable. I embrace that. It's an important thing. The reality is we can educate. I don't do mutton not for any reason. I don't do pork as well. I push out once I have them. So if you're going to give me on my menu nothing else but that, I'm not going to eat. That is what happens in the political space. And we must accept that when we don't give people opportunities or options, rather, they may not take the bait. And I think that's what the point we're raising. Where I want to correct you, and it's a perception. Folks, we are no longer in 1999, where 99% of our staff was, the presiding officer was a teacher. In these elections, less than 9% of the presiding officers were teachers. Where is the evidence that we're employing SATU? SATU is this. And not all of the teachers are, in fact, unionized in that manner. And I think, folks, we are doing so much harm to ourselves. And that database is open. It is open to political parties. It is open to everybody to see where we recruit from. Political parties will know that every presiding officer that we recruit at every PLC locally, they will be given the names of the people. These are people you should know. We have a criteria that says if they are indeed politically affiliated, object to them, bring it to our attention, and we remove them. At every election, including by-elections, we do that. And so I think let's also just bring that to the table. and be clear about it. I want to just embrace that Mariman, you and I were outside. I want you to tell these people what you and I were saying to each other. We are great friends when we live in public. Let's be friends when we live privately, let's also be friends when we live in public. One guy from the PAC, and I'm leaving Tessa, one guy from the PAC many years ago, probably 20 years ago, he's passed on. He's gone home. May his soul rest in peace. We were sitting in a national PLC after the 1999 elections, and the debate was fierce. People were saying, yeah, you employ people from these parties and these parties. And I thought he had the wisdom of Solomon. You know what he said? And that's what I told Mariman when we were out. I said, he looked at the results and said, my goodness, in this country, 62% of the people voted ANC. The chances of the IEC employing 62% of their staff without them knowing is very high. I was telling Mariman, in KwaZulu-Natal, I'm beginning to suspect that 45% of our staff were MK.
Oh. Moments of levity. All right. We are quickly running out of time, but I did note 4 hands. I'm going to take those 4 hands. And there are now 7 hands. I can't do them. Excuse. Yeah. So, sorry, let me just, I had hands noted. The guy in the jacket, I had noted your hand. The gentleman in the green shirt, I had noted your hand. Sir, I've noted your hand. And to the guy at the back, I'm going to ask, can we defer to the lady that hasn't spoken because you have? Is that fine? All right, and then those are my 4 hands, and then we're going to wrap because I have run out of time now.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah, it's on.
Okay.
Please stand if you can.
Sure. My name is Nathaniel Sobulai. I'm from the IEC. Dr. Lokhodi, you mentioned some statistics around voter registration, especially the youth voter registration. I think it's almost like, you said, between 45% or so on. But I'm trying to think, why do these people not vote? And I was hoping that at the end of this session, I'll actually have a clear answer so that when I go back, I know what to do. But I'm tempted to agree with the chairperson to say maybe they don't have something they can choose from on the menu. But that is not a solution. So I'm still looking for a solution as I leave this place to say, what is it in terms of technology that we can do to bring them in? I know a few pointers have been sort of raised here and there, but I still have a gap in my mind to say, what is it exactly that I need to be doing, or as the IEC, we need to be doing to make sure that these people can vote?
Sure.
Maybe the none of the above will work, but we need to see how we can actually get them to come out and tick and say that I want to vote for this person or none of the above. Thank you.
Sure. Let's move the mic. So there we go. They're both on the end there. So there's actually a young man who promised me he was going to register a party called None of the Above in the last election, and I'm very sad that he did not, because I was actually curious to see what was he going to do if he got it right. Yeah, we can hear you.
Good day, everyone. By the name, I'm Nesu Sudakaro from University of Limpopo, an honor student in international politics. As Dr. Likhodi did mention that she's considering a transition to e-voting that will result into fraudulent behavior between political parties and independent candidate paying its specialist to make numerical twist. As we all know that internet is a playground for hackers. My question here is that how are smaller parties are being prepared for this future transition, as there are financial disparities between political parties. Not every political parties have capacity to hire their own technological expert to safeguard their privacy. Thank
Sure.
you.
And then next to you.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for the opportunity. I'm also a student at University of Limpopo doing honors at international politics, and title of my mini dissertation is that will emerging technologies close up or widen the economic gap between South Africa and USA? So in that manner, I'm trying to say I'm very much happy and blessed to be part of this discussion. Since technology has changed the world over the years and various aspects of human activities, we should not forget that South Africa is a developing country with a high rate of unemployment, whereby a large portion of people does not have access to technological devices, especially old people. So I don't know, with using electoral vote, my question is simple and straightforward. Don't you think maybe this new system of voting will shake our democracy, whereby most of people will not be part of decision making now, especially the old people? And to support on what the Univen student was saying, since she's not happy with old people there at the parliament taking decisions for the youth, I don't know, maybe she's also not happy with old people there at home voting or what. No? Thank you.
All right, we have one more comment and input here in front.
Thank you very much,
I forgot about you.
MC, and greetings, everyone. I'm MJ. I'm not necessarily going to make, any idea, or to present any form of an idea on what things should be. But I think my proposal would be, firstly, to say we cannot actually, by digital technology voting, re-inculcate the culture and the interests of learners, of students or young people into voting or into politics. That culture has been lost, because during the time of the struggle, those formations, student formations which brought children or youngsters or students into student politics and youth politics was out of the anger of the system. And then everybody was there to say, no, this is what I can do. And then immediately when democracy was installed and monopolized, by the elderly people, then the youth lost interest. So there are so many things which have been said, which are all very interesting and very important, which can lead us to finding a solution. But today here we cannot emerge with a clear-cut, solution to say this is what we are going to do. So my proposal would be to say, let's take all the inputs which were raised here, the concerns, the frustrations and all, and then maybe create another platform where we can separate people into small groups and, give them specific topics to go and interrogate them and engage in robust, debates, come up with, proposals, clear proposals.
Yeah.
As recommendations, so then we deal with those recommendations.
Sure.
And at the end of the day, we can say, this is, the process we can.
No, I think
take,
today
to
felt like a
find the solution.
brainstorming session, and I think that's a very fair proposal for the civic and democracy team. So, I forgot that I noted somebody's hand earlier. I'm trying to be as democratic as possible in my autocratic role.
Good afternoon, everyone. First and foremost, I think we should actually applaud the IEC for actually coming up with ways to vote digitally, because we are actually moving towards digital means of doing things. I think in relation to lack of youth participation in elections and in politics, the issue starts with political parties because they are busy making empty promises towards elections. But then once they get into power, they do not actually take into consideration the interest of the citizens. And then there's a saying that says, sorry?
That's why
that's
they're
the
not
problem.
voting.
I think that's what they're trying to actually deal with, so that we can have interest in politics. And then, because if we don't, then what's the process, what's the whole purpose of democracy? So obviously, there's a saying that says you can take a horse to the river, but then you can't make it drink. It's the whole process of elections. They can tell us what they want to do, but then if once they get into power and then they don't do what they're supposed to be doing, what's the whole process of us voting? Because then our voices are not being heard. Thank you.
All right. I think we're nearing the end of the day. And I wanted to kind of end the day with just saying 5 takeouts that I think have been threads in this conversation. I hope I capture as much of the conversation as possible. But for me, the first one is this question about electronic voting. And what it has highlighted is that we cannot have electronic voting until we have trust. And so there's a trust deficit in our politics. And that trust deficit has unfortunately not just been about the politicians, it's about our democratic institutions. And so I think there's a wholesale discussion we need to have about whether or not people trust our democratic institutions and how to build that trust. And I think the IEC has had, in the last 30 years, very few moments of real, distrust in the system. So I think that there's a new era for the IEC as well, to walk a journey of how does the IEC build trust. So the role is changing now. It's not just to administer, it's also to build trust. And I wanted to link it to a point that was made earlier about democracy being a Western concept. Democracy is a Western word, but it can be anyone's concept, in that it means the people govern. And so if we choose Western, old, colonial ways of doing democracy, we are making a choice. There are ways for people to govern themselves that we may not have imagined yet. And there are innovations that we can make to democracy that indigenize democracy to the things that we need and the questions that we have. And so that leads me to my second thing, that as was said in the last presentation, democracy is about culture. And even our conversations about technology are about culture. So yes, we can have conversations about technology in a very static way. But actually, it's just about where does technology help us to improve political culture? It's a way of life that we have to engage in, and we have to meet people where they are. And I mean, I was doing work in the democracy in the electing space before the elections. And when we spoke about gamification, we realized that if we did gamification, we wouldn't be able to reach young people who don't have data. So we resorted to making a board game that was a physical board game. That reached more young people because we have to think about what is the context we're working in and what is the culture that we are trying to create. We also realized that if people are doing gamification on their phone, just with them and their phone, they're not actually interacting. They're not actually engaging. So we have to think about what kind of political culture we want, which leads to the third one, which is the role of political parties. We have over 500 registered parties. You were talking about 70 on the ballot. We have over 500 registered. Something has got to give. At some point, we are going to have to stop recreating the same party over and over and over and over again. Young people are clearly saying, what you are doing is not working. And I mean, we talk about 60%, 40%. You only got 40% of the people who even registered. We're not even talking about those who haven't.
40% of those who voted.
Yeah. And so we really need to say to ourselves, as political parties, the offer is not what it needs to be to get the interest of young people, which means it doesn't matter what the platform is. If the interest is not there and the engagement is not there, the platform does not matter. And I think young people have said that very clearly today. And that helps address the question that you had, Ndade, in terms of what must we do to create interest or to get young people to vote, they need interest, not just access. Because right now we're creating access, but we are not actually doubling down on what will interest young people. And we have not solved the issue just in terms of information and the way the information comes across. Political parties are still writing 200-page manifestos. I promise you, in English, in a country as diverse as ours, all our manifestos are written in English. Absolutely all of them. And they're written in documents that are big enough to be textbooks. There's something that needs to change about the way we create interest, not just access. And I think that the final thing for today that I think we must all engage with as much as we possibly can is that when we think about democracy and we think about governance and whose job it is, that it's everybody's job. One of the things that technology does is it opens up space for more actors. And so while I've been very hard on political parties, very hard on the IEC, I want us to be hard on ourselves. And I want to end that by actually making an example that has nothing to do with technology, but has everything to do with young people, to show that we have to take initiative. In Zambia in 2021, a group of young people got together in a social movement called Youth for Parliament. And Youth for Parliament is a movement of young people across different political parties who decided that because political parties were not getting them onto the lists, that they were going to start advocating for each other to get elected. What they did is they managed to build a network from 22 young people who got the idea. They built a network of 60,000 young people across the country. Importantly, they did it without a Twitter account, without a TikTok account. If you go to their TikTok account, there's 100 people. But they did it actually using WhatsApp. They used the WhatsApp a lot. They got over 100 young people elected in one election. And that's because they decided they were going to be disruptive and change the culture. And they took matters into their own hands. And so I want to say to the young people, particularly in the room, do not wait for old people to make space and give you things. Start getting yourselves together, even across political divides, and start creating new things and demanding better. So I hope that that helps us think about what we've gained from the session today. I am going to hand over to the IEC to do our closing remarks, but I want to thank everyone for the robust participation. I hope that we will have more sessions where we can sit and ideate these into practical solutions. Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you very much for this opportunity. As the IEC, we do not regret for having created this platform. I think we have been shooting in a wrong angle. And today we listened to young people, and young people are expressing themselves. IEC is not implementing e-voting. IEC is doing research on e-voting, whether e-voting could become one of those tools that we could use to change perhaps the culture, as Tessa has said, to change the culture of how we run elections. We've been running elections since 1994, and we're losing a lot of people, particularly we're losing young people. And Tessa has given us some tips on what we could do to organize ourselves. I think as the Electoral Commission, this is not the first or the last seminar, thought leadership seminar. I think young people who have spoken here have given us additional ideas on what we should do. I think we must get this thing right. Political parties, let's get this thing right. I think it's not only about the IEC, it's also about us. About political parties. Let's get this thing right. We are losing Limpopo is a youthful province. We are losing the majority of young people. And our speakers have spoken. They have spoken. Technology, South Africa is actually moving forward. We're entering an era where the work as you know it today will no longer be the same. You will no longer wake up at 7 o'clock to go and knock at an office. So the question is South Africa ready for all this electronic? Are we ready? And are we as voters also ready for e-voting? And I will tell you what we are doing in the Electoral Commission. We are using technology a lot. And we do a lot of research around coverage, around network coverage. We brought Vodacom and MTN in the same room. And we said, give us statistics in terms of coverage in the furthest part near the border of Zimbabwe or near the border of Botswana. Tell us what are your statistics. And both Vodacom and MTN came forward, including Telkom. And they gave us a broad picture of the Limpopo province. We have that map as Limpopo province around coverage. And we went to our IT and at national office, and we said to them, as Limpopo, we want to participate in it. We don't want to leave anybody behind. How can we use the voter management device, which requires technology, to run elections, even in areas where Vodacom, MTN, Telkom, or whoever are saying we do not have network coverage? And somebody, I think that person is intelligent, developed an offline mode. So this technology can be used in an offline mode. It operates like you are in the Johannesburg metro, whereas you are very far. Rakibi, there is a village called Rakibi where network is zero. So the people of Rakibi participated in elections and were able to use this voter management device in an offline mode. And when we took that device into an area where there was network, it updated. So we were able to get all the data we need from Rakibi village about elections, about participation, similar to what the Johannesburg people were getting. It's just that theirs was delayed because it was not live. But the management device was actually working. So ours in South Africa is an indirect democracy. We as voters, including young people, I think we are also to blame. We have an indirect democracy. We are not representing ourselves. The Madam Speaker of the legislature is here. We are not representing ourselves in the Limpopo legislature. We are not representing ourselves in Cape Town. We are not representing ourselves in municipal council. We have given our powers to those representatives. After the 29th of May, after we elected these people, how many of us have actually engaged to check how they are doing with the power that we have given them? I mean, if I was to say, let's raise our hand, those of us who have engaged post-elections, I do not think we will be able to do so, because we then become passive. We do not engage. We become passive. Even those who did not vote, we are passive. When are we going to become activists? And I think my leader here from the political party said it very well. There was activism before 1994. Those students who were saying fees must fall, there was activism. They were talking across political divides. and they were saying, although we want tertiary education, our parents cannot afford. But we would like to get this tertiary education. And they organize themselves across political divides. So I agree with Tessa that it's high time that as young people, really, Limpopo is a youthful province. What are we doing? Are we allowing democracy to sink? I think this is exactly what we are doing. We are allowing democracy to sink. The world is moving, the world is going digital. And the question is, what are we doing as young people? South Africa cannot be left behind. Definitely not. In fact, as South Africa, we are leading our sister election management bodies in the continent of Africa. We have developed a guide for election management body on technology in elections, and this was adopted by the AU. So we are not sitting back and watching what is really happening. So in October, as Mem Arisi is saying, we are going to organize a conference on this research that HSRC is doing on whether South Africa is ready for e-voting. We do not know what the outcome of such a conference is going to be. And we're going to invite those who have already implemented e-voting to share their experiences. And it might be that we are ready, and all we need to do is to change the culture that Tessa is talking about. So thank you very much, speakers. I think you have given us ideas on how we can enhance and take this process forward. Out of this, I think we are going to influence this research that is being done by HSRC so that by the time the conference comes and the outcome of this research is presented, we know exactly what we are going to do. So young people, talk to us. We are excited. Talk to us more. Because every election, we cannot keep on saying the same thing. Why are young people disengaging? Why are young people disinterested? Why are young people not participating, not voting, and all other related matters? We would like you to engage us. Give us ideas on how this democracy can be saved. It's like a Titanic, and the Titanic is sinking, but it's only us. In a true spirit of patriotism, if you love your country, if you love South Africa, you will come forward. You cannot allow your country to sink. You can't. So come forward, engage, and develop interest. Political parties make politics fashionable. Do whatever you can. And you know, I think one of the young people said, we're given a plate. I don't think it's about giving somebody a plate of food. I do not think it's about giving somebody a plate. It's about engaging with that person and making that person to feel that they are relevant to this democracy of ours. We cannot buy votes. As the Electoral Commission, in fact, it's illegal in terms of our laws to buy votes. You must convince people to queue and vote for you. You can't give people plates or whatever the case might be. What happens after they've eaten the food? Anyway, I don't want to become a politician. So on that note, I sincerely wish to thank you very much for participating in this thought leadership seminar. We are excited as the Electoral Commission. It has actually ignited more and more debates and more discussions. And universities that are here, I think we want to partner with you. Whatever you are doing, please don't forget that the IEC also has interest in all these research questions. Some of the students are also doing research on the issues that we are interested in. So thank you very much for all your preparations. And we also have our tokens of our appreciation for the speakers, and would like to present the speakers with our tokens of appreciation. So you can come over.
There we go.
Oh yes. Thank you. Right? Is your phone a modern, or is it a 1994? Thank you very much. Ronald, thank you. Thank you very much. Ah, thank you. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Sorry, my apologies. Thank you very much. Thank you. Oh, yes, our facilitator, and thank you very much, my dear sister. Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you very much. Over to you, facilitator. Oh, okay, so I'm told after this lunch will be served at the restaurant, but let's send over to facilitator to conclude. Thank you.
Now, I think that brings us to the end of the day. I don't want to stand between yourselves and lunch. But thank you again. We've run well over the program, but thank you again for everyone. Your participation is greatly, greatly appreciated. Siyabonga.
Thank you.